Mr. President Raimondi, Mayor Bruls, Rector van Krieken, Mr. Dierik, ladies and gentlemen, this is a very special moment. It's a great honor to address you at this presentation of the 4th Treaties of Nijmegen medal. This medal, the medal, is a unique award. It offers, in my view, an essential insight about our continent, Europe. Now, it would be all too easy to think of European cooperation as something invented only after 2 devastating world wars. Next year, we celebrate the 60th anniversary of the Rome Treaty in your country, establishing the European Economic Community. And many see that moment in 1957 as the true beginning of the European Union. But the treaties of Nijmegen show how wrong that notion is. Signed 3 centuries ago between 8 European powers, they long ago embodied values that would shape the Europe we know today. Peaceful cooperation among neighbors, respect for international law, and the conviction that might doesn't make right. European cooperation is a forest whose trees were planted over the course of centuries, not decades. And the city of Nijmegen is right to celebrate its contribution to that forest. And this city is in spirit a truly European center, as you said, Mr. Mayor, just a few minutes ago. It is also right to celebrate the contribution made by today's laureate, the European Court of Human Rights. The notion that human individuals possess universal, inalienable rights was not widespread when the treaties of Nijmegen were signed. Yet today, it's impossible to understand Europe without understanding the need to respect human rights. Today's award is also very timely. Human rights are under pressure worldwide, and Europe is no exception. Too often, human rights are dismissed as a luxury, a worse, and a nuisance. Too often, security concerns are used as an excuse to suspend certain human rights. And I thank Professor Janneke Gerards pointing out some of the situations in Europe and around Europe today where we have to be concerned about human rights. In the time that I'm Minister for International Affairs, for Foreign Affairs, I've never seen such a low point in the respect for human rights worldwide. We look at the situations in Syria, but also in many autocratic regimes around Europe, but also in the stress tests that we experience ourselves in Europe when it comes, for instance, to issues of migration and human rights. But there is no such thing, let's be clear about that today, as a pause button for human rights, not even in times of insecurity. Protecting human beings and respecting their rights are vital for any stable and secure society. And the court's patient work has produced a wealth of evidence to prove it. Its work also shows that no country should be exempt from scrutiny. Mr. President, in May 2010, your predecessor, President Jean-Paul Costa, visited this country, where he received on behalf of the European Court of Human Rights the Roosevelt for Freedoms Award. And Her Majesty Queen Beatrix presented the award, and our then Prime Minister, Jan-Peter Balkenende, delivered an address. And he recalled the court's unique role in strengthening democracy and the rule of law in Europe. The court, he said, brought security and stability to our society and had fully earned the respect and support of the member states of the Council of Europe. And I couldn't agree more. Now, of course, a great deal has changed since then. And I'm not referring to Queen Beatrix's abdication in 2013. In fact, I'm pleased to note that earlier today you were received by her successor, His Majesty the King. No, I'm talking about the circumstances under which the court is required to pursue its important mission. Some of these have changed quite dramatically. Some were mentioned this afternoon. And ever since the court picked up steam in the 1970s, it has been prone to debate. And sometimes, maybe as it should be, controversy. If an institution has transformative power, it's also part of controversy. Many in this country will recall, for instance, how the court encroached upon the power of the Crown in ruling on appeal in administrative litigation. The Crown included the head of state and the responsible minister. Many took the view that in its judgment in the so-called Bentham case, the court had not properly understood how we did things in the Netherlands. They felt that the court has disregarded a valuable national practice developed over the course of 125 years. More than 30 years on, however, administrative appeal to the independent courts established in response to the Bentham judgment has become an integral, accepted, valuable part of our domestic legal culture. And it's hard to imagine citizens nowadays accepting a minister acting as a de facto judge of last instance. Similar examples can be found in other member states. The court has contributed greatly, often against the odds, to the development of human rights and the rule of law throughout Europe. Its success as the ultimate guardian of human rights is unparalleled and its role more important than ever. No other human rights system provides for a full judicial procedure for every individual. Every individual. It includes a binding judgment and a sophisticated mechanism to ensure that judgments are executed. The court's authority is widely respected among judges in the member states and other legal practitioners. Its case law has a far-reaching impact, as demonstrated not only by an older example like Bentham, but also by numerous more recent judgments in areas such as family law, gender, immigration law, I was just talking about it, penitentiary law, and the law of criminal procedure. The court is truly a last port of call for those whose rights have been disrespected or insufficiently recognized by domestic authorities, be it in Hungary, be it in the United Kingdom, or be it in this country. It embodies the awareness that human rights are too fundamental to be left entirely to the powers and interests of the nation state. Its existence acknowledges that fair treatment of all individuals is a prerequisite for peace and stability. So what changes have occurred since President Costa's visit back in 2010? First, an enormous amount of work has been done. In recent years, we've seen a long-awaited decrease in the number of pending cases on the court's docket. In 2010, the court was swamped with an unimaginable 160,000 applications. That number has now been reduced by more than half, a dramatic change indeed. This is due in part to innovative measures agreed by member states, such as the institution of the single judge formation. But the credit for bringing down the number of pending cases should go equally to everyone working at the court, judges and registry alike. Naturally, we have to consider the remaining 70,000 or so applications. They are key. People have to get their rights. And these include the more complex cases, which form a challenge in their own right. But almost half are also repetitive cases concerning legal questions the court has already addressed. Repetitive cases should never reach Strasbourg in the first place, in my view. They indicate inadequate implementation by a member state of an earlier judgment. Sometimes the reasons are bureaucratic, as everywhere, a lack of capacity in a state's legal system, for example. But there is also a more worrying reason why states fail to follow through on the court's judgments. The European Convention on Human Rights, the court's authority, the binding nature of its judgments, and the supervision carried out by the Committee of Ministers are, in my view, the jewels in the crown of the Council of Europe. Yet they are being seriously jeopardized by political developments, both in member states and at the international level. Let me offer you a few examples. In 2015, a legislative amendment was adopted by the Duma of the Russian Federation. This empowered the Constitutional Court to determine whether findings by international human rights organs, including the European Court of Human Rights, are to be implemented or not. And despite the critical opinion of the Council of Europe's Venice Commission, this law is now in force. And it casts a shadow over the entire process of supervising the execution of judgments, in this case against Russia. The Committee of Ministers' supervision of the execution of the judgment, famous Hearst versus the United Kingdom, has lingered for over a decade now. The House of Commons has still not accepted the logical consequence of the judgments, the abandonment of the blanket ban on prisoners' right to vote. Now, the position of the United Kingdom vis-à-vis the court has recently been overshadowed by another discussion. I mean Brexit, of course. Nevertheless, I sincerely hope that the United Kingdom, as one of the founding members of the Council of Europe, will soon find an adequate and uncontroversial solution. The recently expressed intention to reinstate the death penalty in Turkey is another example. Such a move would be a dramatic infringement of the common values embodied in the Convention. It would seriously call into question Turkey's status as a party to the Convention and its membership of the Council of Europe, and in my view, would therefore be also a showstopper when it comes to membership of the European Union. Now, although these examples are very different in terms of their weight and in terms of their nature, their common denominator is a lack of respect for the Convention and the fundamental values it represents, and for the case law of the Court. The Council of Europe, which is after all the Court's political counterweight, is struggling to find an appropriate response to what I would call a very worrying trend. And it's important to realize that the tools are there. The Council has a whole range of instruments it could use, be they in its statute, in the Convention, or elsewhere. I already mentioned the Venice Commission. The Commissioner for Human Rights sets his own agenda, but we shouldn't forget the innovations of Protocol number 14, like the power of the Committee of Ministers to refer a matter to the Court if the execution of a previous judgment is being hindered by a problem of interpretation. Or the Committee's power to refer to the Court a question of whether a state party has failed to properly execute a previous judgment. I am well aware that these tools are intended to be applied only after very careful consideration. But right now, we, in my view, are being too timid. We're simply not using the instruments at our disposal. The final challenge, or another challenge for the Court I want to mention here today, concerns the process of electing judges. From a Dutch perspective, these elections are a unique feature of our convention system. Electing judges is rather alien to our own domestic legal culture, but we are very content with how the system works. It has ensured a high level of judicial competence gathered within the Court. Having said that, however, the system is vulnerable and prone to undue political influence, threatening the very authority of the Court. All stakeholders, the Member States, the Committee of Ministers and the Parliamentary Assembly alike need to work together effectively, each within their own competence. They need to guarantee that the Court remains composed exclusively of judges who fulfill all the requirements set out in the Convention. And on that note, Mr. President, I'm pleased to inform you that the Netherlands will very soon submit its nomination of 3 highly qualified candidates to the Parliamentary Assembly with a view to the election of a new judge at the Assembly's January meeting. And by the way, we have a lot of parliamentary debates also on your court here. We had a lengthy debate, I had it just a few weeks ago with my own parliament, on this famous issue of the margin of appreciation, but I think that's important. We can talk here about the court. The court is alive. It's there for individuals. It's there for political debate, but it has to remain, obviously, completely independent. Mr. President, I have by no means exhausted the list of current challenges facing the court, which, as you know only too well, are manifold. I have every confidence that you will be able to meet those challenges head-on. Your institution, Mr. President, is more important than ever. I think this afternoon many issues were mentioned. When Europe is under discussion, your voice is key. When neo-nationalism is on the rise and concerns on the respect for human rights are so legitimate, your role is indispensable. So I would like to conclude by once again expressing my government's deep appreciation for the Court's impressive work under your able leadership, and my hope that it will continue its tasks as the guardian of human rights in Europe. Thank you very much.